Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. I know that I've been away from the channel for a very, very long time, but there's very good reason behind that, and a lot all will be revealed soon in the coming months in the new year. But yes, it is that time of the year again. I have to make this video. I can't not do it for us to discuss and talk about our favorite films of this year, 2021. And this will be an especially exciting list for me to make, simply because I've been away for so long, I haven't actually talked about any of these films on YouTube. And so pretty much all the films on this list, I will be talking about for the first time on this here channel. And that's really exciting because you guys probably have no idea what could possibly be on this list. There are a few films, just like every year, that I have not seen yet, which I think could and perhaps would have been on the list. The two big ones for me being Nightmare Alley and Licorice Pizza. I'll be seeing them very soon, but I didn't get a chance to do it before the end of the year. And so without further ado, let us get into the honorable mentions, which are The Eternals, which actually, had I seen a second time, probably might have actually cracked the list. The Suicide Squad, Raya and the Last Dragon, Army of the Dead, The Last Duel, Blue Bayou, and Don't Look Up. And now that the honorable mentions are out the way, let us get into number 10. So David Lowery's The Green Knight is a film that I absolutely adore and respect on so many levels, because as a filmmaker, I draw so much from this film, and I think that I relate to a lot of the things that David Lowery wanted to do and his approach to telling this particular story, in that it is a plot-driven film, and it's a quest-driven film, but there isn't actually a proper story. And he goes about showing us this journey in such a dreamlike and surreal and beautiful way, in such a poetic way, and the way that he uses the visuals, the editing, the music, and of course the very specific way in which he directs the actors, are all things that I really draw from as a filmmaker. So aside from being a really interesting and enjoyable film to watch, it's also one that me as a filmmaker will definitely draw from and come back to, and just to study for years to come. Moving on to number 9. Last Night in Soho is the least Edgar Wright film that Edgar Wright's probably ever made. I think a lot of people have already said this, but it definitely felt like Edgar Wright trying to make a horror movie rather than a horror movie directed by Edgar Wright, if that makes any sense. The same way that Midnight in Paris is a love letter to, well, Paris, Last Night in Soho is a love letter to the London way of life in a way. The beauty and the horror, obviously it goes very dark and it does explore a lot of the absolute awful, horrible things that have happened in the past, but at the same time it is a very kind of beautiful and nostalgic look back, which is something I always love, especially as someone who actually lives in the city and has been to a lot of the places that the characters go to in this film, like actual literal places, not the emotional metaphorical ones, but it is something that I very much enjoyed. And I think that even if you take out all of the themes and all of the things that they're trying to explore, it just kind of works as a really fun, enjoyable horror film that you can sit down with friends and watch. It's a great kind of uni hangout film as well because of the setting. And for me, there will always be something truly unique and magical about Edgar Wright making a London film. Okay, moving on to number 8. A Quiet Place Part 2 for me was probably the biggest surprise of this year, because I did really enjoy the first film, but I was absolutely blown away by Part 2. John Krasinski is a fucking insane director. I think that he's just knocked it out of the park and then some with the sequel. This for me took everything that was great about the first one and built on it tenfold. The performances are insane, and finally, as someone who has always been a Nolan fan and has watched Cillian Murphy in just about everything, but never truly got why people loved him so much, even though I've seen all of Peaky Blinders, I finally got Cillian Murphy, because he is just, for me, like one of the best characters, one of the best performances of the year. He was absolutely insane, especially for those of you who have seen it at the pier scene, which I have talked about in my Letterboxd reviews. I think that pier scene is like top 3 best scenes of the year. It is just masterful filmmaking, a director firing on all cylinders and utilizing every single aspect of the filmmaking process to craft just cinema, magic. That for me is just like, wow. So Quiet Place Part 2 at number 8. So The French Dispatch answers, I think, the long-time question that a lot of people have asked, which is, can there be such thing as too much Wes Anderson? And the French Dispatch finally answered that question, and it is yes, you can indeed have too much Wes Anderson. But I like that. I really do. This film for me was just so delightful in all the best ways, and it explored stories and characters that are so vibrant and interesting, and does it in a way that, for me, doesn't feel pretentious and feels very playful and unique. As Wes Anderson always does. It's one of the most beautiful films of the year. It has the best cast of the year. That ensemble is unreasonably stacked. And I think that there is something about Wes Anderson where he is able to explore the art of cinema in a way that feels very detailed and intricate, as opposed to showing it in its elegant simplicity, as some of the other directors later on in the list do. And there's something that I really love about the kind of just density of it all. And this film is a great kind of example of that. And for those of you wondering which of the short stories was my favorite, it was the one with Benicio del Toro and Adrian Brody and Léa Seydoux. So yes, moving on to number 6. This was that one film that came in and kind of saved a certain genre for me this year, because I have been seriously put off by a lot of musicals that have come out this year, just straight up annoyed. And Steven Spielberg comes in with Janusz Kaminski, who I think does his best work ever. I think he needs to win Best Cinematography for this film. And I think Spielberg genuinely creates one of the most dynamic, interesting, and just alive films that he's ever made. And I think that West Side Story, both the original and this version, they have this rare quality of being timely but also timeless, if that makes any sense. But Spielberg is able to inject so much life and so much energy to it. And out of all of the films on this list, actually, I would say I was least interested and invested in the characters. Because if you just take a second to think about it, everyone in this film, almost everyone, is a thundering dumbass. So you kind of have to remove yourself from that. But aside from that, I genuinely think that out of all the films on this list, this is the one that needs to be studied by film students or whatever. If you want to make films, you need to watch Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, because the guy just utilizes the camera like a paintbrush. And he does so in a way that no other director, I think, can do right now. So yes, West Side Story at number 6. Shang-Chi was probably the most fun I've had with the film. I've rewatched it 3 times. It's such a pure, entertaining, and just awesome movie. It was the first time I'd gone back to the cinema since watching Tenet, and so obviously that kind of had a role in it. This film has some of the best action in any superhero movie ever. The bus scene is incredible. The sense of energy and the sense of wonder that you feel watching this film, and the sense of the wonder that you feel the characters, you see the characters go through, is something that I really, really just loved. But most importantly, and I think the thing that for all of us makes Shang-Chi stand out so much, out of all the MCU films and a lot of superhero films, is Tony Leung as the Mandarin, as Wenwu, and his relationship, that dynamic between him and the Shang-Chi, and to see this kind of complex family relationship being depicted in this big Marvel film, and done in such a brilliant way, and in a way that doesn't feel forced, and in a way that feels so natural, is a testament to the actors, but also Destin Daniel Cretton as the director. And it makes it quite a unique Marvel experience for sure, and obviously one of my favorite films of the year. So at number 5, I think this is sort of that weird outlier. I say this every year, there's always that one film that everyone's like, well, why is it so high? I love Malcolm and Marie. I think this film is just beautiful in every way. Now, obviously, for me, the weakest part of it is the kind of whole meta-criticism of film criticism and all that kind of stuff. That is weak. But what I love about this film is the duality of it all, in that this is simultaneously the most erratic and petty, childish, impatient film, but also the most patient and romantic and poetic and beautiful film. It's able to balance those two sides so well, and I think in a way the characters of Malcolm and Marie actually sort of strangely represent the two different sides of my mind and how I deal with conflict and how I deal with situations. There are a lot of scenes in this film, where I was watching and I was kind of going, I've done that. I've said that. I've had that said to me. I've had, and there was something very fun, but also kind of hard hitting about that. And my favorite scene in the film, the most powerful for me was the bathtub, the bathroom scene. That scene, it's like Sam Levinson is obviously famous for kind of these incredible, crafted, big, bold, showy sequences. The guy just kind of puts the camera there and lets these two actors act, and it is just beautiful, beautiful to behold. And John David and Zendaya were just incredible. And I saw so much of myself in both of these characters as artists, as people in general. And I was seriously affected by this film. And in a way, it's almost the most personal experience that I had with a film that I saw this year. So I really do love and appreciate the crazy and almost messy nature of Malcolm and Marie. At number 4 is No Time to Die. So this is again also quite a controversial film, and one that not everyone's going to agree with me in terms of the placement on this list, because a lot of people, as you know, we all know, are not the biggest fans of the conclusion and the way that it ends. But for me, the reason that this sort of rule-breaking conclusion works is because it is the conclusion to the story of the rule-breaking Bond. What Daniel Craig has been able to do with the character has transcended what the previous actors have been able to do. And what that is he's been able to turn his tenure into an actual saga as opposed to just kind of these standalone adventures, right? They're all kind of sequels to each other. They connect. There are character arcs and plot threads and all of these sorts of things that go through. But most importantly, it's the emotionality of Bond and the humanity of Bond, which is something that Craig was able to start off in Casino Royale and conclude so beautifully with No Time to Die. As someone who grew up with, in my opinion, the best Bond, it was just such a beautiful send-off for me personally. All right, I know that a lot of people disagree with that, but just as a fan, just as someone who grew up with this series, you know, it's just like Avengers Endgame. I was sort of like, okay, I'm happy. You guys did it. Good, fine. But on top of that, the incredible filmmaking work from Cary Fukunaga, one of the best looking Bond films ever, has some of the best action. Hans Zimmer's score is incredible. And I guess it's a recurring trend across a lot of the films on this list for me personally, but it feels alive. You know, I think it's a Bond film that feels excited and happy to be a Bond film, that appreciates and acknowledges and embraces the quirks and the kind of the over-the-top eccentricities of the genre. And so you do have that grounded Craig era Bond feel, plus this kind of old school stuff, and you know, they pair together, in my opinion, relatively well. You know, I think I might one day talk about some of my issues with the film at a later date, but I do love No Time to Die. It is an excellent film from a filmmaker's point of view, but also just as a kid who grew up watching Bond and was taught so much by this franchise, you know, and it really influenced my filmmaking journey, I really appreciated the conclusion. Now at number 2, we have a tie. And I have never had a tie this high up on the list before, which is, it's very difficult, and also a testament to how great these two films are. And they are... and... Zack Snyder's Justice League and Spider-Man No Way Home are quite possibly the two most similar, but the two most different films on this list, because obviously the first superhero film to come out this year and the last superhero film to come out this year, the one common thing that they share is the fact that both of these films somehow exist, and everyone is still struggling to comprehend how on earth we were this lucky. Because obviously the Snyder Cut is this kind of labor of love from the fans and this brilliant demonstration of the beauty that can be created as a result of fans coming together, of audience members coming together. And again, with Spider-Man as well, but, you know, we really campaigned and really behind Zack Snyder's version of this film to support a filmmaker. I think the release of the Snyder Cut was a big win for not just the fans and Zack Snyder, but for filmmakers and audience members everywhere, because we finally realized that our voices could be heard in such a significant, poignant way. And of course, the film itself is bloody brilliant, in my opinion. This 4-hour epic, kind of like Lord of the Rings level superhero movie that for me has achieved a level of cinematic epicness that the MCU has not been able to do from a filmmaking point of view. And you're getting all of these incredible stories. You know, you're getting a decent Batman film, a decent Wonder Woman film, a very good Superman film, an incredible Flash and Cyborg film. You know, that big Flash scene is just still one of the best scenes of this year. And he was still able to do all of that, but then add the Deathstrokes, the Martian Manhunters, and Jared Leto's Joker getting his redemption finally. And as a diehard DC fan, someone who knows the comics, someone who knows the characters and loves everything about DC so much, and to be able to see a filmmaker come on and just kind of really do what they wanted to do and put their stamp on it with so much authenticity, you know, was genuinely a joy to watch. And I do think that this is, you know, high tier, god tier level superhero filmmaking, just like Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, actually, I do like this film for kind of opposite reasons to Justice League, because I think that this is actually quite a flawed movie. A lot of it is kind of messy and strange. The first act and the second act, and it's very weird. But obviously, it's kind of impossible not to love as someone who grew up with all three generations, right? Like, I was part of that generation that was lucky enough to have Toby at a specific point, Andrew at a specific point, and then Tom at a specific point too. And where, as I said, with Endgame or No Time to Die was the culmination of a certain part of my childhood, the absolute beauty of this film lies in the fact that it has taken three different parts of my childhood and said, we're going to put them together, but not only that, we're going to give you more, you know, potentially in the future. And that for me was just like, I still am struggling to process it. It was probably the best cinema going experience I've ever had. It's the only time I've ever cheered in a cinema. You know, I've said it once before, but it basically has this ability, this film, to turn every cinema into like a World Cup final football match, because everyone is just going crazy. And I just love that communal experience. And I think more so than any film, Spider-Man No Way Home was able to remind all of us the beauty of the cinema going experience. And you know, and that it's a sacred thing and a magical thing that should not be ignored and should not be abandoned. And you know, just to see some of the characters together in the same room, in the same shot, talking to each other, was genuinely like seeing certain parts of my childhood come together. I genuinely felt like my variants at different ages were coming together, and I was able to see 6-year-old me, I was able to see 12-year-old me, and I was able to see, you know, 17-year-old me come together, and it was just this incredible experience that I still think I can't adequately describe in words and do justice to. And so that's why I love Spider-Man No Way Home and Justice League so very much, and they will have a place very near and dear to my heart for years to come. Moving on to my number one favorite film of this year, which is the masterpiece that is Voyage into the Night. Is my number one. No, it's not. But yeah, like, go check out Voyage if you haven't. I like the film very much. I'm very proud of it. You can stream it on Amazon and Vimeo on demand if you want. But anyway, the actual number one film of the year, I will not be saying my own film is the best film of 2021. My actual number one film of the year is... Yes, so Dune is my favorite film of the year, kind of. And I say that because I'm not nearly as emotionally connected or invested in Dune as I am with a lot of the other films on this list. But Dune for me represents a lot as a filmmaker. To be able to see Denis Villeneuve make this one-part film, and it's not even a bloody complete film, like it just kind of stops, right? But to make this epic that in a way we don't really see anymore. As a fan, one thing I've always wanted to see is a science fiction film that also blends in elements of fantasy. Now, of course, you have Star Wars, blah, 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 but I'm talking like Star Wars meets Game of Thrones, or 2001 meets Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, you know, like to combine these two legendary genres. And Denis Villeneuve does that so well, and with so much maturity as a filmmaker as well, which is rare. And even though this is very much just the start, maybe that's why it's my number one. It's my number one because this is the beginning of, in my opinion, if these films go well and if people love them, this is the beginning of a certain era of filmmaking that is going to be incredible. And it's this idea that we're kind of having this new breed of George Lucas's and Peter Jackson, right? That we're kind of harkening back to that. These director-driven epics that we haven't seen in a very long time. And to be able to see Denis Villeneuve with all of these actors, all of these incredible talented people come together and create part one of what promises to be an incredible, unforgettable journey is something that I am so excited for. And maybe that's why it's my number one. Because even though I don't love it quite as much as some of the other films, and it hasn't hit me as hard, it's because it marks the start of something that I, as a filmmaker, but also as an audience member, am so incredibly excited by and cannot wait to see how it all plays out. And so that is my list for my favorite films of 2021. Please let me know your favorite films as well, your list down below. I'm very curious to see where everything ranks for everyone, because I think we're going to have a few different opinions, and I can't wait to discuss it with everyone about that. Thank you so very much. I hope you have an incredibly happy new year, and I shall see you for many, many more videos, but more importantly, some incredibly exciting and big announcements come 2022. Thank you so very much, guys. Have a happy new year.